Okay, next task on the list here on the onboarding checklist is to start a transaction. So prerequisites for this is to obviously have a prospect or a contact in their database that will be able to start a purchase transaction. There's a couple of ways we can do this. Obviously, if the onboarding checklist is over here on the right, we can click on this shortcut button. But usually we are doing it from within the client as the source. So we can come in here to manage contacts. We can view the contact here, and we can engage via this direction by sending them agreement, having them assign that agreement. That will then convert them to a contact. Okay, so one of the ways of, just to clarify, one of the ways of starting a transaction is from the contact's perspective, so user directed, and that would be from them signing an agreement that has the status to convert a prospect to a client. So we covered that off on the agreement video, and then that would then convert that contact from a prospect into a client. Remember, 3 phases of a contact. We've got a guest without email or phone. They move into a prospect once we have fuller details of them, and then once they actually engage our services and begin a transaction, we move them into a client. Okay, so the first way to start a transaction is when the contact signs an agreement, and that agreement is set up to automatically move them from a prospect to a client. Some agreements don't do that. Some agreements, might just keep them as they are, but that's the first way. The second way would be from the transaction side of the equation. We might have a client already on our database, or they may have not signed an agreement for whatever reason. We can then start a transaction with them once they are a contact via the transaction pipeline page here on the left, and then come up here and add a add a client, sorry. This is adding a client transaction. So 2 ways. We can select an existing client. We've got one there, back to options, or we can add a new client from this direction. When we're adding them here, we do add some partner information and some higher, priority and notes information for that client. Basic stuff that we can edit later. But when they move into the client space, we do want to have a little bit more information there about them. So, coming here, I'll go back and we'll actually just use this existing client here that I've got to add to pipeline. That now creates a fresh new transaction for that client. We're able to then move that through the transaction pipeline and do all of the wonderful things here within Propora for them. All right, we can see the transaction's been created successfully. We have Tweet as the new contact. We can see all of the information here around that transaction. Look, a lot of these elements on the transaction card are editable. They will be covered in later videos. Have a bit of a play. If the agreement was added or used in the contacts or the client conversion, then that would be here. Any documents you wanted to add. And each stage of this transaction pipeline has an action to complete. So on this first stage, we're only really wanting to do one thing with them, and that is book a preliminary strategic conversation or whatever your first kickoff meeting is. And that would be that first stage or step. Hopefully that makes sense. Thank you.